Hi, all of you. Welcome to a new OiC Sunday reflection on the Gospel of St. Mark. My name is Maicon, and I am the pastor at OiC International Church, and this is the Gospel of the Naked. This week, I want to talk a bit more about mystery. Last Sunday, with all the social distancing rules due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided to meet some friends outside. It was a cold but a really sunny and a really beautiful day. And what we did is we went treasure hunting in the forest. Super exciting, right? So one of our friends had gone into the forest the night before and hidden a treasure. And he had made this awesome map on a long scroll of paper. So the kids got the map. We were two families with kids. The kids got the maps. And it was their job to follow the map and follow the clues in the forest along the way, while us grown-ups followed them and made sure they didn't, go down a cliff or something. It was lots of fun, because there's nothing like solving a mystery and getting candy in the end, right? That's what the treasure was. Mark apparently liked the mystery thing as well. But the clues that Mark is dealing with as he writes his gospel seem a lot less straightforward than the treasure map that our kids got for finding candy in the forest. I already shared with you on another Sunday reflection, and if you haven't seen that, you can check all of our videos on our YouTube channel and our Instagram. And I shared with you on another day about what has often been called the messianic secret. This is the name that theologians have given to this peculiar dynamic in the gospel according to Mark, in which Jesus keeps on telling the people that he heals not to tell anyone about it. And he keeps on telling these impure spirits that shout out at him that he is the Son of God, he keeps on telling them to be quiet, and so on and so forth. It seems in the Gospel of Mark that Jesus is trying to keep his messianic identity, his identity as the expected Christ, that he is trying to keep that as a secret, even as he is at the same time going about in a very public ministry. And this is what we call the messianic secret. But that is not the only mystery that Mark tells us about. Again, he said, "What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it?" This is from the chapter 4 of the Gospel according to Mark. "It is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds on earth, yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants, with such big branches that the birds can perch in its shade." With many similar parables, Jesus spoke the word to them, as much as they could understand. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. But when he was alone with his own disciples, he explained everything. So there is the messianic secret, and there is the secret of the kingdom of God. The parable that I just read for you is part of a whole set of parables in the chapter 4 of the Gospel according to St. Mark. And already after the first parable, we find the disciples asking Jesus to explain to them the meaning. Because parables are not straightforward. The use of parables was not uncommon at the time of Jesus. It wasn't something that just Jesus did. The word itself, parable, comes from the Greek, and it means to throw alongside. And in the Jewish context, it is quite possible that the concept of parable had influence or reflected on the Hebrew word marshal, which meant riddle or proverb. So parables are not only not straightforward by chance, they aren't straightforward on purpose. They're not meant to be straightforward. They are meant to contain an element of mystery. Now, these aren't just any parables, of course, the ones that Jesus are saying. They are parables told within the Jewish tradition, and that comes and parables that come to us wrapped in the biblical tradition of mystery. The reason that I point that out is that the biblical notion of mystery brings embedded in it the notion of revelation. When parables are heard and received within the context of revelation, of words spoken from God, the implication is that having been revealed by God, only God can reveal their meaning. God has the key, so to speak, for understanding the parable. And what is more, if the parable concerns God himself, well, then its understanding can never really be complete. But I'm rushing ahead. We'll get there. The point now is that Jesus starts speaking in parables. In the Gospel of Mark, this is the chapter in which he starts using parables. And he starts speaking in the parables to the crowd that is listening to him. There's a whole crowd of people, and he's talking to them. And first, he tells the parable of the sower, which many of us know quite well. A farmer goes out to sow his seed, and as he throws them, they fall on all sorts of different soils. Some on the side of the path where they're gobbled up by the birds. Some on rocky places where they do sprout out, but they are burned by the sun because their roots don't run deep enough. Some fall among thorns that grow taller and stronger than the plants and choke them. And some fall on good soil that produces a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, and some 100 times. As Jesus finishes this parable, which is the first one he is telling in this group of parables, the disciples ask him, what does it mean? What does it mean? And he answers that the secret of the kingdom of God has been given to you. But to those on the outside, everything is said in parables. Oh, great. This is great, right? So now he's about to give them the key for understanding parables, right? Because they're the ones closer to him. He will reveal the mystery to them so that they will now become the ones who understand, while the others, the crowd, those on the outside, they will remain those who don't understand, who aren't in on the secret, as it were. Except that that's not really quite how it goes. Jesus, in fact, starts by rebuking them for not understanding the parable in the first place. Don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand any parable? He tells them. And I love when Mark brings us grumpy Jesus. He then explains them the parable, saying that the seed that is being sowed is the word, and the different soils are different people and how they receive and react to the word. Here's what's interesting though. They receive an explanation for that particular parable, but they aren't exactly given the ability to now understand all parables. They are still pretty much clueless as to how to understand this revelation of the secret of the kingdom of God that Jesus said is given to them. Jesus tells more parables. In this chapter, more parables about seeds. The kingdom of God is like a man who scatters seeds on the ground and sees them grow at their own accord. Whether he sleeps or works, the seeds sprout and they grow. He tells the parable of the mustard seed that I just read for you a while ago. And then when he's alone with his disciples, Mark tells us, he explained everything. They didn't get it. They didn't understand them as they were told. They needed that personal explanation. But perhaps that's what Jesus meant when he said that the secret of the kingdom of God has been given to you. Maybe he meant that Jesus would explain each parable to them and then they would actually get it. Mark wraps up this sermon of parables, however, with a revealing story. Jesus had been preaching from a boat so as to not be run over by the crowds. So he comes on a boat a bit back in the water so that everybody can hear him. And when evening comes, he tells his disciples. So the way Mark sets this up, it's like Jesus is speaking all these parables from this boat. And then when evening comes, he tells his disciples, let's go to the other side. The other side would imply the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And then Jesus tells them to go to the other side, and he snugs up in the stern of the boat, and he goes for a nap, and he sleeps. And they're crossing the sea, and halfway through the crossing, the winds pick up, and a furious storm breaks out. And the waves are washing over the boat, and the boat is being thrown all over the place, and even the seasoned fishermen among them are scared. Yet Jesus is sleeping, which is remarkable enough. And they go to him and they wake him up and they say, don't you care if we drown? Don't you care if we drown? Jesus gets up and he tells the storm to quiet down, which it does. And then he turns to the disciples. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And the disciples are terrified at what's going on. And they ask each other in whispers, who is this? Who is this? The disciples' reaction has a double effect at the end of this chapter. It reaffirms the disciples' struggle to understand the mystery of the kingdom of God. For all those parables that they heard and all the explanations that Jesus gave them, they're still lost. They don't get it. And at the same time, this reaction of them, who is this? It brings us back with, as we read this, into the bigger mystery, which is the messianic secret. Who is this? Which is what the Gospel of Mark is all about, right? The good news of Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God. Mark is bringing the mysteries together. The disciples struggle to understand the parables about the kingdom of God, and their struggle to understand Jesus, just who he was. What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Who is this? And the answer to both mysteries is there in the boat with them. But they can't grasp its meaning. And how could they? How could they? There is a convergence between the life and ministry of Jesus and these parables about the kingdom, but we see that because we are presented the story through the skillful storytelling of the gospel writer Mark. They are in the middle of it, and all that they can argue in their defense is that they are there. They stuck around with Jesus as he told those parables that they didn't understand, and as he inexplicably slept through a storm as if it didn't matter. They stayed. And that precisely is where they need to be. Mark is intertwining their lives, doubt and fear included, intertwining their lives into the life of Christ and into the fabric of the kingdom of God. He is surrounding them with the mystery of the Christ, and he is surrounding them with the mystery of the kingdom. And what they must learn, what they are invited, is not to solve the mystery, not to control and understand the mystery, but to remain in it, to remain with it, to trust it. I said before that when a parable concerns God himself, its understanding can never be complete. More than learning to explain the parables, the disciples are going to learn to inhabit their meaning. More than learning to explain Jesus, they are going to learn to inhabit his presence. His word and his spirit would take root in them, and they would become an unlikely shelter for others. Mustard seed growing in the unlikely soil of these scared and confused followers of Christ. Which, if I'm honest, it's my kind of people. Or rather, the people of my kind, the people that I'm like. As I read through the Gospel of Mark, I am thankful for the mystery. If I thought I understood it all, I would assume I could ride the storm on my own knowledge, and I would drown. But if there was no revelation, I would despair, for I wouldn't recognize Christ in the boat. As it is with the mystery, I often wake him up in prayerful despair. I don't know what's going on. I don't get it. I don't understand that you seem like you're sleeping. But I know you're here. Don't you care that we drown? Don't you care that we don't understand? I'd rather struggle with my inadequacies in the presence of Jesus. And I'd rather be embraced by the mystery that I cannot grasp. We will talk more of the mystery, of how the disciples learn to live in it and express dimensions of it before they can even name it. But as we come to the end of chapter 4, we ask with the disciples, who is this? And we are invited by them and by Jesus to remain there with our doubt, with our fear, but within the mystery of the kingdom of God, in the presence of the mystery of the Son of God. So may He bless us and keep us. May He make His face shine upon us and be gracious to us. And may He turn His face towards each and every one of you. And may He bring you peace. Go in peace and serve the Lord joyfully.